For the coronation, Prince William, Kate, and their children make a stylish entrance at Westminster. The sun rose bright and golden over London on the morning of the coronation. This was not just any day. This was the day when a new king would be crowned, and the whole world was watching. In their home at Kensington Palace, the royal family woke up early. Prince William stood by the window, looking out at the clear blue sky. He was thinking about his father, who would soon be the king. William felt proud, but also a bit nervous. Today would change everything. "Are you ready?" Kate asked as she walked into the room. She was already dressed in a beautiful blue outfit. Her hair was done perfectly, and she wore small diamond earrings that sparkled when she moved. William turned and smiled at his wife. "As ready as I'll ever be," he said. He looked handsome in his special uniform with all its medals and badges. These showed his service to the country over many years. Down the hall, their 3 children were getting ready too. George, the oldest, was very serious as he put on his formal clothes. He knew that one day he would be king after his father. He was only young, but he already felt the weight of this future. "Mummy, is my dress okay?" asked Charlotte as Kate came to check on her. The little princess twirled around in her light pink dress. She had a small matching hat with a ribbon. "You look beautiful, darling," Kate said, fixing the small wrinkle in Charlotte's dress. "Remember to smile and wave to the people. They've been waiting all night to see us." Little Louis, the youngest child, was having trouble staying still. He bounced on his bed, full of energy. "Will there be cake after?" he asked, his mind on the party that would come later. Kate laughed. "Yes, there will be cake. But first, we have the very important ceremony, and you must be on your best behavior." Like a proper prince, Louis said, puffing out his chest before dissolving into giggles. As the clock struck 8, servants brought breakfast to the family. They ate together, talking about what would happen that day. William explained the old traditions to the children. "The crown is very heavy," he told them. "Grandfather has practiced wearing it. It's not just heavy because of the gold and jewels. It's heavy because of what it means." George nodded, understanding. Charlotte asked if she could try on a crown someday. Louis spilled his orange juice and didn't seem to care about crowns at all. After breakfast, there was a flurry of last-minute preparations. Clothes were checked for any marks. Hair was fixed again. Security men in black suits came to tell them it was almost time to leave. William knelt down to speak to his children. "Today, people all over the world will be watching us," he said in a kind but serious voice. "Remember who you are and what you represent, but also remember that you're still children. It's okay to smile and enjoy this day. It's a happy day." Kate joined them, putting her arms around all 3 children. "We're so proud of you already," she said. When the time came to leave, they walked out to the waiting cars. The palace staff stood in a line, bowing as they passed. Outside, they could hear the distant sound of crowds cheering in London. William took Kate's hand and squeezed it gently. She smiled at him, her eyes showing both excitement and calm strength. They had faced many public events before, but none as important as this one. The royal children climbed into the car, with Louis pressing his face against the window right away. George sat straight and tall. Charlotte arranged her dress carefully around her. As the car pulled away from Kensington Palace, the family began their journey to Westminster Abbey, where history waited for them. The streets of London were lined with thousands of people waving flags, all eager to catch a glimpse of the future king and his family on this historic day. The royal car moved slowly through the streets of London. Inside, Prince William looked out at the sea of people. There were flags everywhere. Red, white, and blue colors filled the streets. People had been waiting all night just to see the royal family pass by. "Look at all the people," Louis said, his small hands pressed against the window. His eyes were wide with wonder. Kate smiled at her youngest son. "They're here to celebrate the coronation. They want to be part of this special day." The car was special, with big windows so people could see inside. This meant the family had to look perfect the whole time. George sat very straight, just like he had been taught. He tried to copy his father's serious face. Charlotte sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, sometimes giving small waves to the crowd. "Remember when we practiced waving?" Kate asked the children. "Not too fast, not too slow." Louis waved wildly at first, making William laugh. "Like this, Louis," he said, showing him the proper royal wave. Louis tried again, doing it better this time. As they got closer to Westminster Abbey, the crowds grew even bigger. Police officers lined the streets. Soldiers in bright red uniforms stood at attention. Some people had camped in tents for days just to get a good spot. "Dad, were there this many people at your wedding?" George asked. William nodded. "Yes, and at great-grandmother's funeral too." The British people cared deeply about these important moments. Charlotte pointed out some children in the crowd who were about her age. They were wearing paper crowns and waving small flags. "They're dressed up like princes and princesses," she said. "Everyone likes to feel part of the magic," Kate explained. "That's why we must always be kind and wave back. It means so much to them." The car turned onto the Mall, the famous road that leads to Buckingham Palace. Here the crowds were 10 people deep in some places. The noise grew louder, cheers, clapping, and even singing. Louis covered his ears for a moment. "It's so loud." Kate put her arm around him. "It's their way of showing they're happy." As they drove, William pointed out important London landmarks to the children. "Look, there's Big Ben. And over there is Trafalgar Square. One day, you'll learn all about their history." The car slowed down as it approached Westminster Abbey. The ancient building stood tall and grand against the blue sky. Its stone walls had seen centuries of royal history. Kings and queens have been crowned there for over 900 years. "It's so big," Louis whispered, looking up at the towers. "It was built a very long time ago," William explained, "before cars or planes or even electricity." As they got closer, they could see other important guests arriving. There were kings and queens from other countries. There were prime ministers and presidents. All were dressed in their finest clothes. "Remember, when we get out of the car, there will be many cameras," Kate reminded the children. "Stand tall, smile, and stay close to us." William checked his watch. They were right on time. The car pulled up to the red carpet that led to the Abbey doors. Outside, the cheers of the crowd grew even louder. "Are you ready?" William asked his family, his voice calm and strong. Kate straightened Charlotte's hat one last time. George took a deep breath. Louis bounced slightly in his seat, excited. "The whole world is watching," William said. "But just be yourselves. That's what people love most." The car door opened. Bright sunlight streamed in. The noise of the crowd hit them like a wave. It was time. The Cambridge family was about to make their entrance at Westminster Abbey, taking their place in history on this most important day. The car door opened. A royal guard in a bright red uniform stood ready. Prince William stepped out first, tall and proud in his military uniform. The medals on his chest shone in the sunlight. The crowd's cheers grew even louder when they saw him. William turned and offered his hand to Kate. She stepped out gracefully. Her blue dress caught the light, and the small diamonds on her hat sparkled. The crowd gasped at how beautiful she looked. Some people took pictures. Others waved their flags harder. "They love her," someone in the crowd said. "Our future queen." Next came George. He was trying hard to look grown-up. His back was straight, and his face was serious. He stood next to his father, looking very much like a young version of William. Charlotte came after her brother. She stepped carefully from the car, holding her dress so it wouldn't touch the ground. When she saw all the people, she gave a small, perfect wave. The crowd loved it and cheered even louder. Finally, little Louis jumped out. He almost forgot to wait for help. Kate quickly took his hand to steady him. Louis looked around with big, excited eyes. He waved with his free hand, making people smile. "The Cambridge children are so well behaved," someone said in the crowd. The family stood together for a moment at the bottom of the steps. Cameras clicked all around them. This picture would be on front pages of newspapers around the world tomorrow. "Stay together," William said quietly to the children, "just like we practiced." The red carpet led from the street all the way to the huge wooden doors of Westminster Abbey. On both sides stood soldiers in special uniforms. They held swords and stood perfectly still. These soldiers had been standing there since early morning, not moving at all. As the family began to walk, Louis pointed at the soldiers. "Why don't they move?" he whispered to Charlotte. "They're guards. They're not allowed to move or smile," she whispered back. "I heard they get in trouble if they do." George walked just behind his parents, taking careful steps. He knew that one day he would walk into this same building for his own father's coronation. And someday, even further in the future, people would come to see him crowned king. The family passed many important people who had already arrived. There were famous actors, sports stars, and leaders from around the world. Everyone bowed their heads slightly as William and his family passed. Inside the doorway of Westminster Abbey, they paused. The inside of the building was amazing. Stone columns reached up toward the high ceiling. Colorful light came through the stained glass windows. The floor was made of stones laid hundreds of years ago. "It's like a castle from a story," Louis said, his voice echoing a little in the huge space. Kate put her finger to her lips to remind him to speak quietly. Many guests were already seated inside, waiting for the ceremony to begin. A man in special robes came to meet them. He was one of the Abbey officials who had helped plan the coronation. "Your Royal Highnesses," he said with a bow, "please follow me to your seats." As they walked down the center aisle, everyone turned to look at them. The children stayed close to their parents. Charlotte held Louis's hand to help him walk straight and not get distracted. Their seats were near the front, close to where the new king would sit. These were special places saved for the most important royal family members. William took a deep breath as they reached their seats. This was really happening. His father was about to become king, and William was now one step closer to the throne himself. Kate sensed what he was feeling. She touched his arm gently. When he looked at her, she gave him a small, loving smile. Without words, she was telling him that they would face this future together. The children sat down between their parents, straightening their clothes and trying to sit still. Now the waiting would begin. Soon, the ceremony that would change their family forever would start. The Cambridge family sat in their special seats near the front of Westminster Abbey. All around them, the huge church was filled with important people. There were over 2,000 guests. Everyone was dressed in their finest clothes. Ladies wore beautiful hats. Men wore sharp suits or special uniforms. Louis leaned toward his mother. "When will grandfather come?" he whispered. His little legs swung back and forth. It was hard for him to sit still for so long. "Soon," Kate whispered back. "Try to sit still for just a bit longer." George looked around the abbey, taking in every detail. He noticed the ancient stone walls and the high ceiling. This building had seen hundreds of years of history. Kings and queens from long ago had stood right where they were sitting now. "Father," George said quietly to William, "is that the special chair?" He pointed to an old wooden chair near the altar. William nodded. "Yes, that's the coronation chair. It's over 700 years old. Almost every king and queen since 1308 has sat in that chair to be crowned. Will you sit there one day?" George asked, his voice serious. William looked at his son with kind eyes. "Yes, and someday, far in the future, you will too." Charlotte listened carefully to this conversation. She straightened her back even more, trying to look as royal as possible. She noticed some people taking pictures of their family, even though they were trying to be sneaky about it. Music began to play softly. The huge pipe organ filled the abbey with beautiful sounds. A choir of boys and men in white robes stood ready to sing. They had practiced for months for this day. "The music is pretty," Charlotte whispered to her mother. Kate smiled and nodded. She gently fixed a piece of Charlotte's hair that had come loose. As they waited, many famous faces came to greet William and Kate. Prime ministers, presidents, and royals from other countries stopped by their seats to say hello. William stood each time, shaking hands and speaking politely. Kate smiled and chatted with everyone. The children watched this with interest. This was part of their lesson in being royal, watching how their parents handled these important meetings. "That's the way you do it," William had told George once. "Everyone gets the same respect, no matter where they come from." Suddenly, the music changed. It became louder and more exciting. Everyone in the abbey stood up. The Cambridge family rose quickly to their feet. Even Louis knew this was important. "He's coming," William said to his children. "Remember to stand tall." The huge doors at the end of the abbey opened wide. Everyone turned to look. The choir began to sing a special song that had been written just for this day. The sound was magical in the big stone church. First came men carrying tall golden sticks. Then came important church leaders in flowing robes. They walked slowly down the long aisle. "Where is he?" Louis asked, standing on his tiptoes to see better. "Be patient," Kate told him gently. "This is all part of the ceremony." More people walked in. There were soldiers carrying flags, men in old-fashioned clothes carrying special items, and royal guards in their bright uniforms. Finally, everyone could see him. The king walked slowly into the abbey. He wore a special robe made of gold cloth. It was so long that helpers had to carry it behind him. On his head was a simple golden circle, not the main crown yet, but a smaller one for now. William stood very straight as he watched his father. His face was serious, but his eyes showed how proud he felt. This was not just his king walking toward them. This was his father. Kate reached for William's hand and held it tightly for a moment. She knew this day was full of big feelings for him. The children watched their grandfather with wide eyes. They had seen him many times before, but never like this. Today, he didn't look like the grandfather who read them stories or played with them in the garden. Today, he looked like a king from a storybook. As the king came closer to where they stood, he turned his head slightly toward his family. For just a second, he gave them a small, private smile. The king walked slowly to the front of Westminster Abbey. Everyone watched in silence. He stopped in front of the old wooden coronation chair and turned to face the people. The sunshine coming through the colored windows made spots of light dance around him. The archbishop, an important church leader, stood next to the king. He wore special white and gold robes. In his hands, he held a large old book. "What's that book?" Louis whispered to Charlotte. "It's the Bible," she whispered back. "Grandfather has to promise to be a good king." The ceremony began with prayers and songs. The Cambridge family stood and sat when everyone else did. Even Louis tried his best to follow along. Kate helped him find the right pages in the small program book they all had. The king made his promises to the country and to God. His voice was strong and clear as he spoke the same words that kings and queens had said for hundreds of years. William watched his father with proud eyes. He knew all the words by heart. Someday, he would say these same promises. He glanced at George, wondering if his son was thinking about this too. Then came the most special part of the ceremony. A small table was brought forward. On it sat the crown on a red cushion. This was not just any crown. It was Street Edward's crown, made of solid gold and covered with precious stones. It was very old and very heavy. "Look," Kate whispered to the children. "This is the most important moment." The archbishop lifted the crown high so everyone could see it. The gold and jewels caught the light, sending little rainbow colors dancing across the walls. People all over the abbey took in their breath at the same time. It was a beautiful sight. Louis's eyes grew wide. "It's so shiny," he said, a bit too loudly. A few people nearby smiled at his words. Kate gently shushed him, but she was smiling too. The king bowed his head. Slowly and carefully, The archbishop placed the heavy crown on the king's head. The moment it touched his head, trumpets began to play. The sound filled the huge church and made everyone's hearts beat faster. "God save the king," the archbishop called out in a loud voice. "God save the king," everyone in the abbey repeated. The Cambridge family said the words too, their voices joining with all the others. William felt something wet on his cheek. It was a tear. He quickly wiped it away, but Kate had seen it. She reached over and squeezed his hand. She understood what he was feeling. This was not just about crowns and ceremonies. This was about family and the passing of time. The choir began to sing a joyful song. The king, now wearing the heavy crown, walked toward a big throne. 4 helpers had to carry his long robe behind him so he wouldn't trip. Now it was time for the most important people to come forward and bow to the new king. William would be one of the first. "I'll be right back," he whispered to Kate and the children. George looked worried. "Do we have to go too?" he asked quietly. Kate shook her head. "Not today. When you're older." The children watched as their father walked toward the throne. His steps were sure and strong. When he reached the king, William knelt on one knee. This was called paying homage. It meant showing respect and loyalty to the new king. William took the king's hand and spoke special words of promise. Though they could not hear what he said, the Cambridge children could see their father's face. It was full of love and respect. When William finished, he stood up. The king reached out and touched his son's cheek for just a moment. A father's touch in the middle of a royal ceremony. It was not part of the official plan, but it was a moment that touched everyone who saw it. William walked back to his family. Charlotte took his hand when he sat down next to her. "Did you do it right, Daddy?" she asked softly. William smiled at his daughter. "Yes, I think I did." Louis climbed onto his father's lap, forgetting for a moment that they were at a very formal event. Kate started to move him back to his own seat, but William shook his head. He held his youngest son close, watching as the ceremony continued. The coronation ceremony continued. Many important people went forward to bow to the new king. The Cambridge family watched from their special seats. Louis had gone back to sitting in his own chair, but he was getting tired. It had been a long day already. "How much longer?" he whispered to his mother. "Not too much longer," Kate whispered back. "You're being very good." Charlotte sat very straight in her chair. She watched everything with careful eyes. She wanted to remember all the details so she could tell her friends later. George looked thoughtful. He was old enough to understand more about what this day meant for their family. After all the people had paid homage to the king, there was a special part of the ceremony that not many people knew about. The king would receive gifts from his family. These were not official gifts, but personal ones to mark the special day. A palace helper came to where the Cambridge family sat. He bent down and whispered something to William. William nodded and reached into his pocket. He took out a small box. "Is it time for our gift?" George asked quietly. William nodded. "Yes. Remember what we talked about." The 3 Cambridge children had helped choose a special gift for their grandfather. It had been their secret for weeks. Now it was time to give it to him. William stood up. Kate helped the children get to their feet. Together, they walked toward the throne where the king sat. Everyone in the abbey watched them. The family looked perfect together. William in his uniform, Kate in her beautiful dress, and the 3 children in their special clothes. When they reached the throne, they all bowed or curtsied to the king. Even Louis remembered to bow, though his was more of a quick nod. The king smiled at his grandchildren. "Your Majesty," William said in a formal voice, "we have brought a gift to mark this special day." He handed the small box to George, who stepped forward. George's hand shook a little as he held out the box to his grandfather. "This is from all of us, grandfather. I mean, Your Majesty," George said. His voice was small but clear in the quiet abbey. The king took the box with a warm smile. "Thank you, George." Everyone watched as the king opened the small box. Inside was a gold pin. It was shaped like a tree with 3 branches. Each branch had a small stone, one blue, one pink, and one green. These stood for the 3 Cambridge children. The tree itself stood for family and growing together. The king looked at the pin for a long moment. His eyes grew a bit wet. This was not part of the official ceremony. This was a family moment happening in front of the whole world. "It's a family tree," Charlotte said, forgetting to be formal. "The blue one is George, the pink one is me, and the green one is Louis." The king smiled at his granddaughter. "It's beautiful, Charlotte. I will treasure it." He carefully pinned it to his robe, right over his heart. It was small compared to the grand crown and royal jewels he wore, but everyone could see it meant just as much to him. Louis, who had been quiet, suddenly stepped forward. "We helped pick the stones," he said proudly. People in the abbey smiled at the little boy's words. Even some of the serious royal guards had to hide their smiles. The king reached out and touched Louis's cheek gently. "You made a fine choice," he said. A photographer quietly took pictures of this moment. Tomorrow, these pictures would be in newspapers all over the world. People would talk about how sweet the Cambridge children were and how much the king clearly loved them. After a minute, it was time for the family to return to their seats. The ceremony needed to continue. The children bowed and curtsied again. William and Kate did the same. Then they all walked back to their places. As they sat down, Kate squeezed each child's hand. "You did perfectly," she whispered. William looked at his children with proud eyes. Today they had been part of history, but they had also just been children giving their grandfather a gift. Both parts were important. The ceremony moved on to its next part. But for many people watching, the most touching moment had been the simple family gift. The coronation ceremony was almost over. The king had been crowned. He had received the royal objects, the golden orb, the scepter, and the special ring. He had sat on the throne while people paid homage to him. Now it was time for the final prayers. The Cambridge family sat quietly in their places. Louis was getting very tired. He leaned against his mother's arm. His eyes kept closing, then opening again when he heard a loud sound. Kate stroked his hair gently. "Just a little longer," she whispered to him. Charlotte sat very still, but her feet were starting to hurt in her new shoes. She tried not to move them too much. George was still paying close attention to everything. He wanted to remember all the details. As the Archbishop said the final prayers, William thought about his own father. He remembered him as a young man, playing with William and his brother when they were small. Now that same father was sitting on the throne with a crown on his head. Life changed so quickly. When the prayers finished, there was a special moment of quiet in the abbey. This was a time for the king to sit alone with his thoughts before he left. Everyone was supposed to be still and silent. In this quiet moment, something surprising happened. A ray of sunshine suddenly came through one of the high windows. It shone down directly on the king, making his crown sparkle with rainbow colors. It was as if the sun itself was blessing the new king. People in the abbey gasped softly. It seemed magical, like something from an old story. The Cambridge children looked up in wonder. "Look," Louis said, forgetting to be quiet. "Grandfather is shining." A few people smiled at the little boy's words. Kate gently put her finger to her lips, but she was smiling too. The king, hearing his grandson's voice, turned slightly toward the Cambridge family. For just a moment, his serious face broke into a warm smile. In that second, he wasn't just a king. He was a grandfather who loved his family. William saw that smile and felt a lump in his throat. Today was about crowns and countries, but it was also about family. Whatever happened in the years ahead, they would face it together. As the sun continued to shine on the king, the choir began to sing a beautiful song. Their voices filled the huge space of Westminster Abbey. The music seemed to float up to the high ceiling and dance among the stone arches. Charlotte leaned toward her father. "The singing is so pretty," she whispered. William nodded. "This song is hundreds of years old," he told her. "Kings and queens have listened to it for generations. Will they sing it for you someday?" she asked. William looked at his daughter with gentle eyes. "Yes," he said simply. "And someday, far in the future, they will sing it for George." George, hearing his name, looked up at his father. Their eyes met in a moment of understanding. The little boy nodded solemnly, as if accepting a promise that would only be fulfilled many years from now. The music grew stronger, filling every corner of the abbey. The king stood up from his throne. It was time for him to leave. Special helpers adjusted his long robe behind him. The Cambridge family stood too. They would follow the king out of the abbey in a special order. William and Kate made sure the children knew what to do. "Remember to walk slowly," Kate told them. "Keep your heads up and smile gently." "Like a prince and princess," Charlotte said to Louis. She took her little brother's hand to help him. As the music reached its highest note, the king began to walk down from his throne. The crown still sparkled on his head in the sunlight. His face was serious again, ready to meet the crowds waiting outside. The Cambridge family prepared to follow him. They straightened their clothes and stood tall. They had done well so far, but the day wasn't over yet. Now they would go outside where thousands of people were waiting to see them. William took a deep breath. Kate gave him a small, encouraging smile. Together with their children, they were ready for the next part of this historic day. The huge doors of Westminster Abbey opened wide. Outside, thousands of people waited. They had been standing for hours, hoping to see the royal family. When they saw the doors open, a great cheer went up from the crowd. First came the king, walking slowly and carrying the weight of the crown on his head. His long robe trailed behind him. Then came other important members of the royal family. Finally, it was time for the Cambridge family to exit the abbey. William and Kate walked side by side. The three children followed just behind them. The bright sunshine hit them as they stepped outside. After the dim light inside the abbey, it was almost too bright. "Wow," Louis said, blinking in the sunlight. The crowd's cheer grew even louder when they saw the children. People waved flags and took pictures with their phones. Some people had been camping on the street for days just to see this moment. "Look at all the people," Charlotte said, amazed by the size of the crowd. George walked tall, trying to look princely. He gave small waves to the people, just as he had been taught. Charlotte copied her brother, waving gracefully. Louis waved with more energy, making people smile. "They're so wonderful," someone in the crowd shouted. "The Cambridge children are so sweet." Kate smiled at the kind words. She put her hand gently on Louis's shoulder to keep him from getting too excited. William walked proudly, nodding to people he recognized in the crowd. The family had to walk down many steps. Charlotte held Louis's hand to help him. The little boy was careful not to trip in front of all these people. George stayed close to his father, watching how he greeted the important people waiting at the bottom of the steps. At the bottom, a line of soldiers stood at attention. They wore bright red uniforms and tall black hats. As the Cambridge family passed, the soldiers saluted sharply. "They're saluting us," George whispered to his father. "They're honoring the royal family," William explained quietly. "Someday they will be your soldiers." The family walked toward their car. The red carpet under their feet ran all the way from the abbey to where the cars waited. Along both sides, people reached out, hoping to shake hands or get a better picture. Kate saw a little girl in the crowd holding a small bunch of flowers. The girl looked about Charlotte's age. Kate stopped and bent down to speak to the girl. "Are those flowers for the king?" Kate asked kindly. The little girl shook her head. "They're for Princess Charlotte," she said in a shy voice. Kate smiled and motioned for Charlotte to come over. Charlotte looked surprised but walked to her mother's side. "This young lady has something for you," Kate said. The little girl held out the flowers. "I picked them from my garden," she told Charlotte. "I wanted to give them to a real princess." Charlotte took the flowers carefully. "Thank you very much," she said in her clear voice. "They're beautiful." People nearby took pictures of this sweet moment. Tomorrow, these pictures would be in newspapers all over the world. As they continued walking, Louis spotted something interesting: the royal horses that would pull the golden carriage. The horses were huge and wore special decorations. Their white coats shone in the sunlight. "Look at the horses," Louis said excitedly. "They're so big." William smiled at his son's enthusiasm. "Yes, they're special horses trained just for royal occasions." "Will we ride in the golden carriage?" Charlotte asked hopefully. Kate shook her head. "Not today. Today is grandfather's special day. We'll ride in our car." Their car was waiting, shiny and black with small flags on the front. A driver in a smart uniform stood by the door, ready to open it for them. Before they got in, the Cambridge family turned to wave one last time to the crowds. They stood together, William and Kate with their 3 children between them. They looked like the perfect royal family. People cheered and took pictures. This moment would be remembered for years to come. The day of the coronation, when the Cambridge family showed the world that the future of the monarchy was in good hands. As they got into their car, William helped the children inside. Kate made sure they were all seated properly. The car door closed, and they were ready for the next part of this historic day: the procession back to Buckingham Palace. The royal car drove slowly through the streets of London. Inside, the Cambridge family watched the huge crowds through the windows. People lined every street, waving flags and cheering as the cars passed by. "There are so many people," George said, looking amazed at the size of the crowds. Kate nodded. "They've come from all over the world to see this special day." Louis pressed his face against the window, making funny faces at some children in the crowd. Charlotte held her flowers carefully on her lap. She was proud that someone had given her a special gift. "You all did very well in the Abbey," William told his children. "I'm very proud of you." The children smiled at their father's praise. They had tried hard to be good during the long ceremony. "Was it like this when you got married, Mummy?" Charlotte asked. Kate smiled at the memory. "Yes, it was. But today is even more special because it's a coronation. These don't happen very often." As they drove along the Mall, the long road that leads to Buckingham Palace, they could see the palace ahead. Its flag was flying high, showing that the king would be there soon. "Look," Louis pointed excitedly. "We're almost home." The car turned through the big gates of Buckingham Palace. Inside the palace grounds, it was quieter, away from the noise of the crowds. The car stopped at a side entrance, and servants opened the doors for the family. "We need to hurry," William said as they got out. "We must be ready for the balcony appearance." The family walked quickly through the palace. Servants bowed as they passed. Inside, other royal family members were gathering, all heading to the same place. They went up a grand staircase and through long hallways with beautiful paintings on the walls. Finally, they reached a special room that led to the famous balcony. The king was already there, still wearing his crown and royal robes. He smiled when he saw his grandchildren. "There you are," he said warmly, "ready for the big moment." Louis ran to his grandfather and hugged his legs, forgetting all about royal manners. The king laughed and patted the little boy's head. "The crowds are waiting," an official said. "It's time, Your Majesty." The king nodded. He straightened his robes and prepared to step onto the balcony. The Cambridge family would follow him a minute later. Kate quickly checked the children one last time. She fixed George's hair, straightened Charlotte's dress, and made sure Louis's shirt was tucked in. "Remember," she said quietly, "wave nicely to the people. This is the picture everyone will remember." They could hear the roar of the crowd outside. It sounded like the ocean on a stormy day. The king went first, stepping out onto the balcony. The noise grew even louder as people saw him in his crown and robes. Then it was time for William, Kate, and the children to join him. As they stepped out onto the balcony, the sound hit them like a wave. Thousands of people filled the space in front of the palace, stretching as far as they could see. The crowd cheered and waved flags. Some people jumped up and down with excitement. "Wow," Louis said, his eyes huge with wonder. The family lined up on the balcony. William and Kate stood behind their children, who stood in front. The king was in the center. Other royal family members joined them, spreading out along the balcony. The crowd kept cheering. The Cambridge children waved to the people below. George waved politely. Charlotte gave her princess wave, and Louis waved with both hands, making the crowd laugh and cheer even more. Above them, planes flew across the sky, leaving trails of red, white, and blue smoke behind them. The children looked up, pointing and smiling at the colorful display. In this moment, the Cambridge family was at the center of the world's attention. Cameras from every country pointed at them. People all over the world watched on television. But to the children, it was simply an exciting day with their family. William put his hand on George's shoulder. Kate smiled proudly at her children. They had all been part of history today. The coronation would be remembered for generations, and the Cambridge family's stylish entrance at Westminster Abbey would become one of the most memorable images of the day. As the cheers continued below them, the family stood together on the balcony, waving to the crowds who had come to celebrate this historic day.